Hello, everybody. It's time for a new topic of Ryan on Gaming. Today's topic is the big one, the one that a lot of people have wanted me to do one on: backwards compatibility. Backwards compatibility for consoles. Because clearly, this is a console discussion. I know a lot of PC people are going to come in here and be like, "Hey, I have a PC. I can play 15 plus years of games, plus console games with emulators and stuff. That's great, cool for you. But this is a conversation about consoles. So backwards compatibility, why is it gone? Blah blah blah. Evil hardware companies. I want it back. All that jazz. Now the big thing about backwards compatibility is, it's the big reason why it's gone is its price. Price of hardware. It would be too expensive to have a PlayStation 4 that could have hardware-based backwards compatibility for PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, and the PlayStation. With Microsoft, it's kind of the same thing. They can't have an Xbox One that also can play hardware-based playback for Xbox 360 and the original Xbox. It goes into costs. It'd be too damn expensive to make hardware like that. That's like the most simplest answer I can really give you guys. And it's like with Nintendo. Nintendo actually readily supports backwards compatibility, and that's great. But you also got to consider that Nintendo releases, generally speaking, very affordable hardware, so they can kind of afford to do that. And it's also kind of just in their DNA. They're like very proud of like their history. They're very nostalgic. They love to play on classics and everything, and do cameos and crossovers with their games. It's infused in Nintendo's DNA and their design language and everything. It's something that they always do, and that's great. But I think a big part of it is also that they can afford to do it. They release pretty affordable hardware. Whereas on the Sony and Microsoft side, they release, and people are going to come in like, oh, the consoles are so underpowered, but they try to release very, upscale hardware, right? They're PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. It's good hardware, despite whatever the hell people may say. They produce visually speaking, good-looking games and everything. It's good hardware, but that also comes with the expense of creating something more expensive. Even though X1 launched at $500 and it was having a whole bunch of problems there, dropped to $400. Dropped even lower, and now it's finally selling better. PlayStation 4 hit a really good sweet spot with $400. That's selling really well. It's good that X1 and PS4 are both selling really well. That's awesome. But you'd have to figure, if they launched at like $600 or something. I mean, to have a PlayStation 4 have hardware-based backwards compatibility with PlayStation 3, like that's basically putting a PlayStation 3 inside of a PlayStation 4. I don't know how expensive that would have been, but it would have been pretty damn expensive. And at least on the Sony side, you got to figure Sony wants to not screw up with PlayStation 4. I mean, with PlayStation 3. In 2006, when the PlayStation 3 launched, they were selling every console at a loss, at a pretty good loss too. It took Sony $800 to roughly speaking, $800 to make one PlayStation 3, and they were selling each PlayStation 3 at $600 to $500. So they were losing like $200 on every PlayStation 3 they were selling. Now you also got to figure there's a number of reasons for that. Not just backwards compatibility. They also had the cell processor. They had Blu-ray inside of that thing. They were launched the thing with 4 USB ports, flash readers on the 60 gig model. So there's a number of factors as to why it was expensive. But backwards compatibility was one of those big issues. And then they took that out of the PlayStation 3 to make it more affordable to people. Of course, that made everyone super angry, but at the same time, you can't please everybody, because that's exactly what the underlying issue was, is that PlayStation 3 was too expensive. They dropped the price. It's affordable, but, that comes at a cost. And the PlayStation 4 was supposed to launch with... Every PlayStation 4 was supposed to come with a PlayStation camera. That did not happen. Why didn't that happen? Because they wanted to make the box affordable. You got to figure if they would have had a camera in there plus hardware-based, backwards compatibility, the box would have been just way too expensive. It wouldn't be selling the way it is right now. It wouldn't have great developer support, and it wouldn't be in the healthy position that it's in right now. Of course, I say hardware-based backwards compatibility because that's essentially what it is putting the previous consoles inside of the new console to thus guarantee the best sort of compatibility with past software titles. You can do software emulation and everything, but that just is going to get way too complicated. I would have to imagine, at least for software and hardware engineers, that'd take way too much QA to test. It would just take way too long to crack and really get right. I'm going to make that all nice in the background again. it would just take, yeah, it just seems like it would be too much of an investment. You also got to consider, and, it's so obvious for a lot of people, like, look at it this way, like, oh, well, there's no backwards compatibility because they want to sell us all of our games again through remasters and HD and PlayStation Now and blah, 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 blah. And technically speaking, yeah, they do want to do those things, but you got to, like, look at the whole setup, right? They could either do one of two things. They can either invest tons of money into the hardware to make it backwards compatible, sell it really expensive, probably not sell a whole lot of hardware, and then they lose the novelty of selling you those, games over again. Or they can make really affordable hardware, sell the hardware, make it profitable, get a lot of units out there, sell a lot of software, and then yes, they can also, sell you on the, repackage games again. They can do PlayStation Now again. It's like, which one would you do if you were if you were a business owner? It's like, well, clearly you're going to go with the other one, because even if the other one benefits the consumer in a really great way, it's still like, it's just you're in a business to make money. You're not going to make money doing it that way. You're going to be selling a really expensive piece of hardware, and then people don't have a reason to buy new games. It's like, it's clearly you're going to go the other route. It just all comes down to a business thing, right? Like, that's why backwards compatibility isn't a thing anymore. And, Microsoft sees that, and Sony sees that. Again, Nintendo, they can afford to do it. I mean, Wii U launched at an affordable price. We launched at an affordable price. 3DS launched at I feel an affordable price, but it dropped price much later. Sooner, right after that. When's the last time Nintendo released something super, super, super expensive? You see what I'm saying? It's just, they can afford to do that. And I bet if they took that out, they could make their hardware even more affordable, right? But then they also lose that novelty of, like, hey, every piece of new Nintendo hardware can at the very least play previous Nintendo hardware. Like I said, it's part of their DNA. It's something they're always into, and that's cool. But, when you're talking Sony, Microsoft, they have their reasons, and to be perfectly honest, they're very valid reasons. Now, I'm not saying that people don't want backwards compatibility. Clearly, people want it. I mean, why wouldn't people want their PlayStation 4 to play all their old games? Why wouldn't somebody want their Xbox One to play all their old games? But it's just a matter of, you don't have backwards compatibility. Are you living without it? I'm pretty sure you are. One interesting thing a lot of people like to bring up is, why don't the hardware manufacturers release a non-backwards compatible unit and one that is, so people have a choice? And that kind of is it's an issue of retail space and manufacturing. Sony doesn't want to invest the R&D to do that, to make a whole other separate SKU. They don't want to take up shelf space, very valuable retail space. That is a very real issue. It's like, how much retail space is there out there available? That is definitely something to consider. So they don't do that. And when you only have one SKU, one PlayStation 4 model with one, hardware configuration in terms of, like, gigabytes or whatever, that can speed up manufacturing, lower manufacturing costs and everything. It just, again, it's a business thing. It makes more sense to release just one model and one model only. Even if it's like, oh, you can make another one and charge slightly more for it, it just never looks good to have a more affordable box, because then most consumers don't want to buy the lower price model because they feel they're getting a cheaper model. People always like to get the more expensive model. I mean, look at look at the PS3 launch with a 20 gigabyte model and the 60 gigabyte model. 20 gigabyte model was phased out very quickly because people weren't buying it. Despite the fact that PS3 was extremely expensive, people still were like, well, if I'm going to get a PS3, I'm going to get the nicer PS3. You know what I'm saying? So that is also why they would also not opt to make two hardware configs. Anyway, those are just some of the things I want to talk about on that topic. I'm sure there's a number of other, elements that I'm forgetting here. Like I said, I could talk for hours about topics like these, but that is backwards compatibility in a nutshell for Ryan on Gaming. Please get angry, by all means. Let me know. I love reading rants. They're actually really funny. I'm realizing you can't see Charlie Sheen completely. Oh, I hit the mic. Look at that, Charlie Sheen. I forgot I had this shirt, actually. Remember when he had that whole tiger blood thing going on? That was pretty funny. But not 2.5 Men's over. Yeah. I don't know if that show will be missed, but it is over. Anyway, I'm done talking, so I'll see you all in my next video.